Well, good morning. It's Sunday, and it's New Hampshire, and this is PFG Live. The rain has stopped. We didn't think it would. It was a little scary for a while there. Let's see. It looks like everything seems to be working. I want to say good morning to Tuck, who is both on Discord and YouTube. And also Evils, both on YouTube and Discord. Thank you for your help, guys. We do a little pre-game check, and these guys are great giving me a report on video and audio. Let's see. So today we are... sorry for the delay. Joel L., good afternoon. Welcome aboard, sir. There we go. I'm getting excellent reports from YouTube. So today, the weather here is gorgeous in New Hampshire. The color is magnificent. I wish I could show you this. We don't have another camera set up right now, but the colors in the backyard are absolutely spectacular. So we're having a beautiful fall. Carl is checking in from the Rhode Island saying 56 degrees and sunny. Howdy, Carl. CJ Stevens is reporting in. Says, hello from my basement. It looks sunny outside here in East Tennessee. Unable to provide weather as I am rebuilding our dryer. I don't think that's how relative humidity works. I don't think it's going to get any drier, even if you fix it. Let's see, who do we have here in, so also DBX down in Rockland County, New York. Good day, sir. Nice to see you. Thank you for your reports. So if you guys don't know this, we have a Discord server, and we use the Discord server as a another input here to the PFG Live, but also we do a lot of collaborating on the Discord server, and that's huge. New York Machinist is checking in with 55 and cloudy in Corning, New York. That is quite a place for mirrors and glass, Corning, New York is. And Evils is checking in at 20 degrees science and 65% relative humidity indoors in Ghent, Belgium. Welcome. Flatlapper reporting 52 sunny, 4 miles an hour of wind in the north of the Illinois. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. So officially, we lost our weather here. Oh, I lost my weather. Well, I'm not going to go chasing it, but I'll give you the report from Windham. It's 54 degrees here, and let's see. Is it? I don't have a relative humidity. I could tell you the relative humidity in my basement, in my refrigerator, and in my office, but I can't tell you the relative humidity outside right now. Isn't that embarrassing? Well, I'll tell you that right now indoors, it's 60% relative humidity. Indiana John is checking in, 43 and light rain in Wentworth, New Hampshire. Welcome aboard from up north. We have a report from White Plains. White Plains is reporting as of 1734 Zulu. Winds... Oh, I don't recognize that code. Winds are 30018 gusting 30 knots. Visibility greater than 6 miles. Clouds are broken at 4,000. Oh, you're giving me a... There's your problem. You're giving me a TAF, not a METAR. That's why. See? Go back, get me the right information. Tuck is reporting 52 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny with a few scattered clouds in Buffalo, New York. Don't think I wouldn't know the difference between a TAF and a METAR there, buddy. Okay, here we go. White Plains reporting at 1656 Zulu. That makes a lot more sense. Winds 310 at 14, gusting 21 knots, visibility 10 miles, clouds broken at 3,900 feet, broken at 4,600 feet, temperature 2.03. That's kind of dry. Altimeter 29er62. Remarks, peak wind was 300 at 26. That's gusty at 1607. Well, a little bit of gustiness. Here, not so much. A little bit of wind, but not terribly gusty. Let's see. Who else is here? So, a weird week. Not going to lie. It was a weird week. I have, in my consulting business, I have 3 clients, all with requirements crashing at the same time. That does not make for a good time, but we're muscling through it. Today, we're going to be reporting to you on what my kiddo is doing in the high school. Okay, so Carl, this is a really good question. Carl says, I'm surprised that you don't have one of your humidimeters outside. So just this morning, I was thinking about how to set it up and get one of them outside, because right now they're not packaged really well. And I was looking for a container that can keep the rain off it, but let it get the airflow through it. And I didn't come up with a solution. Adagy, am I pronouncing it correctly? Welcome aboard. New name. He's reporting 18 degrees Celsius, 83% humidity, 19 miles visibility in Surrey, UK. Greetings. Actually, back when I was part of Weather Report, I actually was just on the tambourines. Sorry. Anyway. So I was looking for a way to get those things outside, which actually leads me to one of the topics for today, is that my little development stand that I made for the AdaFruit feathers has been magnificent for what we needed it for development. But we've literally hit the point now where everything's working. And it's time for the next step, which is mechanical design of the packaging for this thing, which is going to be 3D printed. And there's a lot of ways to go about it. One of the things I did, so we have four of those development stands, and they're all running the version 18 of my software. So it's 0.18, 0 meaning it's not released, but it's the 18th version. And version 18 is working pretty darn well. And I'm going to talk to you about that in some detail. In fact, we might as well just jump into that as the first thing. Indiana John says, oh yeah, Weather Report. They did an awesome cover of Thunderstruck, if I remember correctly. Yes, but only once. You don't want to talk about that when you drive a Lightning. I'm just saying. So the little sensor project has been really cool. The last major accomplishment was that, again, with a little help from my friends, we got it up and running on the AdaFruit IO server. So we talked about this before, but AdaFruit, of course, they sell these little widgets, and that's their main profit line item, is selling stuff. So they have a server which is also has a pay for a paid service associated with it, where you can publish sensor data to the server, and you don't have to do any programming. You could download their package called Whippersnapper, load it onto one of these feathers. You have to edit one file on the feather, which is your Wi-Fi information and your credentials for logging into AdaFruit, and you're done. And now you go to the website on AdaFruit and you bring up your feeds, you bring up your dashboards, and you control, what you want to see from all your sensors. Pretty cool. And you could tell your sensor information like, here's how often you should be publishing, etc. Neat system. So we went through that phase of doing that, and it works great. But then when I started writing the code for what I call hack RH, for relative humidity, ultimately we wanted to get to the point where we were publishing to that same AdaFruit server and get this great graphical display of all this information, but from our own software. And that's what has finally happened. We were doing it, I believe we were doing it last week, but I discovered a bug. And the bug was that I was seeing fewer reports in the feed of the third thing we were reporting, which I think was relative humidity. So we report the voltage of the battery, the temperature measured, and the relative humidity, 3 things. And I started seeing one of them have fewer inputs to that feed than the others. So I started scratching my head and looking at the software, and I realized it was the third thing we published. So there was a clue. So, this thing will connect to the server, and the way it was working is once an hour, it would go bang, bang, bang. Here's a voltage, here's a temperature, here's the relative humidity, and then it would go away for an hour. Well, it turns out that if you weren't paying any shekels to AdaFruit, you were on the free service, and you were able to have, I think, a half a dozen feeds, which is fine, but you were limited to one report every 2 seconds. Okay, there was rate limiting. Hey, K-Bonk is here reporting 59 and sun and wind in the Philadelphia. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. So I thought, well, gee, they give you a limiting rate, right? 30 per hour, but they don't tell you how fast you can deliver them. So we were delivering 3 of them, bang, 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 and I intuited that it didn't like how fast they were coming. So I put a delay in, and the delay was, again, a variable you set in the configuration file, and I put in 2 seconds. So when it was time to report at the end of your period, which for us is an hour, it would come in and it would report the first number, 2 seconds later, the second number, 2 seconds later, the third number. Fix the problem. Totally perfect. So once we smoothed that out, and I convinced myself over the course of a couple of days of just glancing at the feed that it was not dropping any of our data, I went ahead and I gave him some money. So now for $10 a month, you have unlimited feeds, a bunch of unlimiteds, but you still have rate limiting. The rate limiting goes from 30 per minute. I'm sorry, I think I said hour before. 30 per minute to 60 per minute. So theoretically, you could pop in a number on any of your feeds once every second. So what I did is I left it at 2 second delay, but then I brought all the other ones online. So now all 4 of them are going. All 4 of them are publishing to AdaFruit IO, and that was great. So as I was admiring my data flowing in, which I'll show you in a few minutes, I then realized, what if they start publishing at the same time? In other words, it's on one account, you start having all of them publishing in close proximity to each other, we could hit that limit again. So I started figuring out, well, what do we do about that? WidgetWorks, you're late, sir. He says he has a doctor's note. That is acceptable. We will accept that. -1C, 81% relative humidity in Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome, our neighbor to the northwest. So here's what I did. I introduced a concept. If you're familiar with TCP/IP, which is how this is how we communicate over the internet, you can have collisions on the internet. You could have two packets trying to jam their way into a device at the same time, and they can collide. And the way they solve this in the protocol is you wait a random amount of time between two numbers, and then you transmit again. So if you have two transmitters that are colliding, on the next transmission, the probability that they're going to collide is now very low. So I put that into the software so that it just fuzzes the amount of time it waits for its reporting interval. So nominally it was a 60-minute reporting interval. Now it's 60 minutes plus or minus a fuzz factor that you program in. So I think I've got it at 60 minutes, and the fuzz is, I think, 20 seconds or something like that. So now they will not report in at exactly 60 minutes every 60 minutes. It will have a bit of a fuzz factor, and that will help prevent collisions if they happen. They might not even happen, but there you go. Another feature in the software. So now that software is solid, and I could say that we now know how to publish these numbers to the AdaFruit IO site. So let me just show you what it looks like, because it's wicked cool. So again, if you're listening to the podcast, stare very hard at your headphones. Just kidding. You can go back and watch the YouTube. Here you can see on the screen, there's on the bottom, there's 4 gauges. That represents the relative humidity on 4 devices around my house. On the top, you'll see a graph of the last 24 hours of relative humidity, temperature, and voltage for each of the 4 units. So all this data is now pouring in real time. You're looking at real-time data here. And you'll notice some interesting things. Thank you, CJ. You'll notice if you look at the temperature graph, you'll notice about 24 hours ago, one of the units dropped precipitously. Can anybody guess why it dropped from 65 degrees-ish to 40 degrees-ish? Any guesses? Anybody? Come on, Discord guys. You have the lowest latency. Correct. Evil's got it. Joel got it. I said it on Instagram, so it's not exactly a secret. It's in my fridge. Now, the weird thing was, if you look at the relative humidity graph of that device, well, that's what I'm looking at. It is jumping around like crazy. So we've said this before. What are the 3 most important words in science? They are, hey, that's weird. So here it is. Hey, that's weird. So it was kind of bizarre. Now, keep in mind, there's a few things to keep in mind when you look at this graph. Matthias Wandel's experiments. I don't know who Matthias Wandel is, but it looks like that's another experimenter. Relative humidity is a computation, right? It takes temperature into account in order to compute the relative humidity. So you have to measure the dew point, or some measure of humidity. You have to take into account the temperature. Then you have to do some math, and then you come up with % relative humidity. So it could be mathematical noise that's amplifying that sawtooth in the relative humidity data. But if you look at temperature we know is just simple measurement. So that also has a little sawtooth to it. So I reasoned that maybe I put it right next. It was on the top shelf of my fridge, and maybe that's where some air blows in that has been temperature controlled. So it's a little hot or it's a little cold, trying to get the compartment of the refrigerator to be the magic temperature. So I took it and I moved it this morning to the bottom shelf of the fridge, and we'll see what happens. Wood guy, would I? Who used to work at RIM, proper engineered. So I don't know. So maybe there's a story there that I need to study, Mr. Simpson. Oh, yeah, RIM. Oh, okay. Gotcha. BlackBerry. I will look this guy up. Anyway, the good news is that this thing's cranking out data. The one labeled KP1, which is the first gauge on your screen, and it's the color green in all the charts. That is the one that's now sitting on a shelf in the basement 3D printing area. So that's also the one that's running on a 18650 battery, so the big fat battery. So I put that in the basement, and that's doing its thing. And the other two units are still on the shelf of the windowsill. So this is working out super well, and you can go into this is called, what you see on your screen, this is called a dashboard. So you can go in and build a dashboard. So I built it with 3 graphs. Each graph, I chose what sources to use, and then on the bottom, 4 gauges. There's all sorts of things you can do in creating your dashboard. And I can show you what the feeds look like. Okay, here's what the feeds look like. It shows you all of your feeds, and it tells you when it recorded to the feed. This is how I discovered a discrepancy between the 3 different numbers coming from each sensor. But now they all look well behaved, and they are coming in real time. So let's see. So DBX noticed my hat, which if you're watching, if you're listening on the podcast, it's from Mitch Rosen Leatherworks, extraordinary gun leather. Not sponsored, but Rich is a friend of mine. He lives a little further up north, and he's been here. We've talked about some projects together, and he's a super guy. And I too use his product. Excellent products. So that's a story on our AdaFruit IO interface. Now, there's another super cool feature that their server has, and that is it can send data to the devices. And that's my next hurdle as a software noob, is figuring out how to receive that data. So from your dashboard, you should be able to send some data like increase your reporting rate or decrease your reporting rate, or something. So that's my next thing that I'm going to be learning about how to do. And all of this has come about as I'm learning Python. So, the name of somebody who knows who is a Python programmer is a Pythonista. And I bought a book. I showed you this book before. Okay, Python Crash Course. And I've been studying Python and hacking away on these little AdaFruit widgets and having a great time. Now, the flavor of Python that's run on the AdaFruit feathers is called Circuit Python. And it's just a subset of Python. For my purposes, it doesn't matter yet because I'm still in the basics. That's a little humor if you have gray hair. The basics. Get it? Get it? Anyway, it's going well, and I'm having a good time. I also published my first open source release, if you want to call it that. Basically, I published the most important discovery I made in this whole project. We put some polish on it, added a bunch of comments to it, cleaned it up. I ran it past DBX. I ran it past Unix Carbide, and then I went ahead and I published it to the AdaFruit Discord. They have a Discord just like we're on right now, and they have a section for CircuitPython. So I published it there, and it's on GitHub in what DBX introduced me to is called a Git gist. So it's like a lightweight publish onto GitHub of this function. And I'm talking about, I don't know, 15 functional lines of code, but those were very difficult to arrive at. And that's the code that puts the board to sleep so that it only uses 18 microamps. So that's been done. That's been given to the universe, and we're moving on. So that's been a fun thing, and it's the thing I like about this project. Not only that we're leading toward an extremely useful little widget for our shops and 3D printing areas, and all that kind of stuff, but it's the interaction it's the collaboration with other people who are experts in this stuff that has been just terrific. It's a really nice community to learn from. And for that, I thank you. And it's not unlike how I've learned from the machining community about machining. So it's why we're here. So that's been a whole heck of a lot of fun. So that's the report on learning from the Pythonistas and what we're doing with the little devices. So keep an eye out. Follow me on Instagram. I will continue to update on Instagram, and maybe we'll publish a video on this whole project. But it's been going really well. It was started with measuring relative humidity for the purpose of storing 3D printer filament, because if it gets wet, in quotes, if it gets damp, the quality goes down, and it's gone out of control. So we will report. Carl is asking a completely off-topic question, which is completely appropriate. He says, regarding your Lightning, my Ford Lightning, what is the power consumption when you're stuck in stop-and-go traffic running heat or air conditioning? Gasoline cars piss petrol in traffic. You are totally correct. I have some really excellent news about that. Okay. So my son Jared this summer worked for the camp that he's been going to for 9 previous years as a staff member. And in doing so, I had to bring him to camp every morning for a week and pick him up every afternoon for a week. Well, there was no sense for some of those days. There was no sense in doing the round trip. So I brought a ham radio and makings for putting up an antenna, a topic for another day. Some of you may have seen me post about it on Instagram. I did post about it. Oh, actually, I did a live from that location from the Lightning. So go back, you'll find it. So I was concerned about power consumption, so I charged the Lightning to 100% in the morning. So we left in the morning, got to camp, got him situated. I went to the staff lot and found a nice corner where I could set up for the day. And it was 90 degrees. Okay, that was the temperature that day. So it was a hot summer day. Never turned the truck off. Air conditioning running the entire time. I went out, put up my antenna, couldn't wait to get back in the cab where it was nice and cool. Talked to hams all day. We had one really cool conversation. I was talking to a guy in Germany, simultaneous. We had a 3-way conversation, and the other guy was literally 5 miles away. I don't even know if it was 5 miles, but it might have been less than 5 miles. So it was me and this other guy and this guy in Germany, and it was just a whole bunch of fun. Had fun all day, looked at the clock, realized I better start packing up, packed my stuff up, got it buttoned up. Jared came, found me. We jumped in the truck, drove home, got home, and the second before I shut down the truck, it was at 90%. So that was half hour out, half hour back, all day air conditioning, playing with radios, and it was 90%. So what does that tell you? The cost of the energy cost of air conditioning and as much playing around with radios as you can imagine was microscopic compared to driving. That was pretty cool. So to speak. The answer to your question is it's awesome in traffic. Not only does it not eat up a lot of energy being in rush hour traffic, but because of Blue Cruise, the autopilot, hands-off Blue Cruise, when I go to see my mom and I come back in Boston traffic, it is the lowest stress thing you can imagine. Put it in Blue Cruise. The Blue Cruise works down to 0 miles an hour. I don't care. I'm not using up more energy than, it's awesome. So compared to petrol vehicles, it just crushes it. It smashes petrol vehicles with a large electric hammer. I hope I answered your question, because that was a really hot topic. So, and by the way, if anybody else has any random questions, drop them in. If we could answer them right away, we will. If not, we'll go to the end of the session. So, I showed you on the thumbnail a little hint about what was going on yesterday. Okay. Oh yeah, WidgetWorks, right. Does the Lightning report I think you asked me this question before. It reports energy consumption in hang on. Now I forgot. Miles? Yeah, miles per kilowatt hour. So I have this number on the dash that's miles per kilowatt hour. And typically for the truck, which is not the most efficient thing in the world, it's about 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour. More efficient vehicles like a Tesla is about double that. So my buddy, actually the physics teacher, who we're about to talk about, he gets about double that. Okay, so WidgetWorks, let's address your question, then I'll jump on to the next topic. Any good ideas to true some large 14-inch by 1-inch wide diamond wheels that need to have about 10 thousandths taken off to clean them up? These are the used ones I told you about on Instagram. Yes, Carl, you are correct. So, yes. The first thing is, what Robin Renzetti taught me was to tap the wheels into concentricity first. So I modified now this is going to be a little different because you're dealing with a 14-inch wheel, but not that different. I modified a hub or an adapter, depending on which side of the fence you live on. And I took down the OD of the adapter, so it had a little wiggle in the wheel, and then I changed the locking ring to be a bolt hole pattern of set screws. So the way you use it is you tighten the locking ring finger tight, and then you crank down on the set screws. And what that does is that when you go to tighten it, the set screws do not move the wheel. Whereas if you could imagine, if you're tightening a locking ring, you could move the wheel. So whatever method you use, you get the wheel set concentric by mechanical means as close as you can, and then you lock it down, and now you're ready to do some truing. So it depends if it's a metal bond or a resin bond wheel. Oh, okay. Well, you do it on, so WidgetWorks says it's going to remove some damage, so tapping isn't going to help. It's still going to help. You have to do it, just average it, right? And he says it's resin bond. No, the screws are not pointy. They're just blunt. They're the flat nose screws. And if you go way back in my Instagram feed, you'll see I did that. And you have a brake dresser. No problem. So in order to dress the wheel, you have to, obviously you're going to use whatever means you have. In your case, a brake dresser, you're going to have to dress off a lot of material. And that's just the way it is. I know it's slow. I use molybdenum, and molybdenum is actually faster for truing a resin bond diamond wheel. So you might want to try molybdenum, but you have to slow down to 700 surface feet per minute. And then it's just a matter of material removal. Check how thick your diamond layer is. That's going to be important. But there's no getting around it. And the other thing is, you might not really have to get rid of all the damage, right? If you do that, you're absolutely going to remove as much material as possible. But I like molybdenum, and it will speed things up according to the research. Try that. So I hope that helps. The only thing I'll add to that is, whichever means you use, when you go in to dress the wheel, you could buy the dressing sticks. I get mine from McMaster. I can get you numbers later. But you have to use a full stick. To dress that wheel, you're going to use a full stick. So do not be shy when it comes to dressing. And for people who aren't familiar, dressing means you've got the diamonds. Think of that as gravel in a mud road, right? You have a dirt road, and there's a bunch of gravel in the road. And when you dress a diamond wheel, it means you're going to go in with a pressure washer and remove the mud, but leave the gravel. Okay? So when you go in with a dressing stick, that's what you're doing. You're removing the resin and leaving the diamonds. An old video from Norton indicated that you have to use a lot more of that dressing stick than you think you do. They're the ones that said basically, yeah, and this was on smaller wheels. This was on 8-inch wheels. They said, yeah, you basically have to use 3/4 of a stick to get a proper dress. So just be aware of that. I hope I answered that question. Boy, that took us right into the grinding world, like you read about. So, let me know if you have any questions on that. I'll be happy to help. That's a big honking wheel, and I want to hear more. So, getting back to this past week, so the physics teacher has an event every year. This is the physics teacher at our high school. And it's called Treb Day, and the kids have to build a treb, and they can have teams of 1 to 3 people, and they build a treb. They have to have certain requirements met. The biggest requirement is the length of the total length of the throwing arm cannot exceed 1.75 meters, and the only other requirement that the firing mechanism has to enable everybody to stand, I think, 30 inches away minimum, something like that, and a couple of safety things, and that's basically it. And they have to fire a 1 kilogram water balloon into a castle, and I don't remember the range. Forgive me. I think it's 30 meters ish. So that's the mission. So my son has 2 classmates. They got a 3-person team, and I've been helping those guys out. I did this before with Sam. It was a hoot, and it was just a lot of fun. But I don't really work with wood much. So I'm as much of a noob at working with wood as anybody. But these kids, some of them have not really worked with power tools. They certainly don't have concepts that we consider as, machinists and engineers that we consider pretty standard of flatness and twist and, all that kind of stuff. It's not kind of built in. Good question, Carl. Its total length of throwing arm has to be 1.75 meters or less. They all bring it right to 1.75 meters. So it turns out, Tuck was asking me in the pre-show, Tuck, do you want to come in? You want to come in with an audio question? Maybe we'll do an audio question from Discord. Tuck is typing. Let's see. Just tell me in the chat if you want to come in on an audio question. I'll turn on your audio. You can ask live. Okay. Your audio should be live. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead with your question, sir. Buffalo, New York. Hello.
How did your son come up with the design of the trebuchet? Was it self-inspired, or he get any inspiration from the internet?
So it is unavoidable to not get inspiration from the internet. That just happens. So yes, they do research on the internet. Yes, there's a lot of resources. Yes, there's other educational groups doing similar things. So they have to do research, and they have to separate the wheat from the chaff, which is part of the deal, right? I know you're kind of worried. You're kind of thinking, gee, if they didn't have any external resources, they'd have to work pretty hard. They even have a simulator. So I don't remember where it came from, but there is a trebuchet simulator online. So they can actually do simulations of, the ratio of where the pivot is on the throwing arm. Not only that, there's actually a paper that was written that these guys found years ago, and it's sort of a standard on how the physics of trebuchets, and it turns out that some of these things, like that ratio of the throwing arm, actually has optimums. So that information just gets passed down through the generations, and they start with that. So it's not as from scratch as possible as you would imagine, but so you sort of think, well, it's going to yield a whole bunch of carbon copies, right? And it doesn't. Every year that they do this, there is a handful of designs that make you go, huh, I didn't think of that. Like not last year, but a few years ago, they had a dual trebuchet. It was like two trebuchets launching the sling. It was fascinating, and the fact that somebody came up with that was semi-brilliant. WidgetWorks asks, thanks for the question, Tuck. I'm going to turn off the Discord video. Anybody wants to ask another one, just raise your hand or say something in text. WidgetWorks asks, any rules on how much gunpowder they can use? Yes, there are. All the energy must come from potential energy of the counterweight, period. So no springs, no gunpowder, no pneumatics. Did I ever see videos of the pumpkin chucking contest? I have. It is strangely alluring. Yeah, these kids have just such a good time. You have no idea. It's just awesome. They have so much fun. So we were out there making sawdust, and it was pretty amazing. And they've had two major work sessions. So my son ended up being the CAD guy, right? And they're using not Fusion 360. They're using I think Onshape for reasons. And when we started, I sat down next to him. He showed me his CAD. Oh, that's really good. I said, do you have a cut list? He says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, a list of all the pieces you have to cut in order to build this thing based on your CAD. And he said, well, we don't need a cut list. We have the computer. I have the CAD. I have my laptop. I said, all right. You sure? He goes, yeah, okay. So I'm like, here's a teaching point. So we get outside and we're there yesterday. Now, I know if you're not in the Northeast, you didn't realize this, but it was pouring rain yesterday. And we managed the day before yesterday. My wife and I were at Tractor Supply, as one does, and we bought a 20 by 20 tarp. And I had erected this tarp out in the driveway because I knew that it was going to be pouring rain. Well, it was pouring rain. So we're under this tarp. Literally, it's hard to hear each other with the noise from the rain. And I get out there and I volunteered to be the circular saw guy, mostly because I didn't think we had enough time for me to comfortably teach these guys how to use a circular saw in the manner that it needed to be used. And I said, you know what? I'll run the circular saw. You tell me what you need cut. You see where this is going, right? So Jared is trying to figure out what needs to be cut from his CAD model, having not made a cut list. I let that so that struggle happened, right? And it just went on for a little while. And finally, he hand wrote a cut list and came over with it, and we started cutting materials. And I think that was sort of a major lesson of, how do you go from CAD to, handing it to the machinist? And I called these three guys together. I said, look, you got an engineer upstairs designing something, and he's got to communicate to the machinist downstairs to make the parts. How does that happen? Well, you have to be able to hand the machinist a drawing and say, this is what I need built. It doesn't matter what your CAD looks like. You have to say, this is what I need built. And if the machinist does not understand what you want, it's coming right back to you, because this happens a lot. The machinist will find out that there's a dimension missing, will come right back upstairs and say to the engineer, I'm missing this dimension. I can't build this the way it is. At which time my son says, aren't you both the engineer and the machinist? I said, yes, but that's not the point. You have to have it. So this went on for a while, and I think they got it. So of all the teaching points that happened, as a result of this trebuchet build, that was one of the big ones, is how does the information flow? And it's also something, if we're professionals, being engineers, being machinists, being project managers, we deal with this all the time. And these kids were getting exposed to it in a great way. So that was awesome. And then some of them never really used a power tool. And that was interesting. So we had drill drivers. I had a drill driver, and I had a what I would just call a driver. I have one of each, and I had those set up to drive screws, and I was teaching them how to drive screws. Simple thing, right? They'd never done it before. So all of a sudden, you got these three kids. They're in there, and they're driving screws, and I taught them about gluing and screwing, and they're gluing stuff and screwing stuff, and I taught them how to check for square. Oh, one of the things that happened, which was pretty funny, is I had sent a picture to the physics teacher, Pat, and he says, are you sure these kids have enough tools to get the job done? He knew who he was talking to. And he says, and how are you going to make the base perfectly flat? There's a guy who knows me. So that was pretty funny. Carl says, isn't the machinist expected to be telepathic? I don't even know what I'm thinking. So I think the answer to that is no. Widgetworks says, I do that to myself all the time. I'll make a cartoon for working on the floor and have to go back to CAD to figure out a dimension that I missed, right? So it's true. So they learned how to use some hand tools. They learned what square means. They learned what flat means. I even taught them about we have 2 sawhorses when we were building the base, okay, which you probably think we made out of granite, which my wife brought up. Would have been a good idea. How important it was to get the base flat. So I taught them to put the sawhorses at 75% and 25%, which is not exactly the right points, but it's close enough. And I taught them why, and I taught them where to look it up. So, boy howdy, did the learning happening, and it's not over yet. So later this week, they'll be getting back together, and we'll be bringing it in for a landing. It's going to take a couple of sessions, but the axle will go on next. The throwing arm will get its bearings put on. Yes, we're reusing some stuff, and we'll go from there. But that was just so cool. All right. So that's what's going on. It is a lot of fun to teach these kids new skills, new practical skills. While they're learning physics in class, they're applying the physics, but the physics does not step aside for the practical realities of how you have to build the damn thing, which includes going to Home Depot and buying the stuff. So the first trip to Home Depot, Evil says 25% and 75%. Good enough for wood. I could not agree more. But I took them to Home Depot. We bought all the stuff at Home Depot together, and a pile of 2x4s and 2 sheets of plywood, which was, I don't remember. It wasn't 1/2 inch. It wasn't 1/4 inch. It might have been close to 3/8 inch. And it was $188, which I thought was crazy. But apparently, this is how it is now. Yes, Carl, it was awesome. These kids are great. This and the physics teacher, Pat Caplow, an awesome guy, is one of the good ones. He's one of the good ones. And he has an effect on every single student that goes through his program, whether they become techno nerds or poets. He's one of those guys. So it's pretty cool. Okay, we're getting to the end here. It's time for random questions with random answers. So if you have it, let's hear it. And if you're on Discord and want to ask a question or make a comment, just let me know and I'll turn on your audio. Widgetworks says, I love to tell customers that give shit drawings, sorry, my crystal ball is out for calibration, so I'll require a clear and concise drawing for this project. So I got a buddy of mine who is a fellow black belt in Taekwondo, and he says to me, can you help me make some, which is code for can you make for me, some metal nunchucks? I don't do nunchucks, but he does, and that's cool. I'm not judging. He said he had a set that was made out of a hydraulic cylinder piston, which I think we recognize as chrome-plated 1045 or something. I'll have to check with Adam Booth on that. But he lost them or gave them away or something, and he wants to make another set. And I'm like, sure. I said, I'll tell you what. This was my way of dealing with somebody. Instead of saying, give me a detailed drawing. As an aside, have you had this experience where somebody's interested in a thing that maybe you can make for them, and if you ask them for a drawing, even a sketch, it's over? And this has happened to me about 3 times, and I realized merely the art of doing an envelope, back of the envelope sketch of what you want is not in everybody's bailiwick. Not everybody can do this. So with this particular guy, he wanted me to make him some nunchucks, and I said, well, and I knew he was a woodworker. See, this was the key. I said, can you make me a wooden model of what you want, and then I'll turn that into metal? And he said, yes. Yeah, Joel agrees. He says, yep, never hear from them again. Exactly. Indiana John says, I've got 2 5-foot-long, 3-inch diameter hydraulic pistons that I want to make into rolling mills. There you go. Perfect. So here they are. In case you're wondering if I was going to show it to you on video, here is the set of wooden nunchucks. And so he made them exactly the way he wants them, but he wants them in metal. So now the question is, what are we going to do with these? So I have a approach that I'm going to tell you about. So Carl says, when I die and go to heaven, the engineers will have to build, use, and maintain the stuff they design, and I get to watch. That's funny. CJ Stevens says, just chuck it up. It'll take a minute. So you'd think so, right? So he made me 2 sets, one set with the little chain, okay, the way he wants it, and one set not. So if we look at a single one of these things, we learn a bunch of interesting things. If I get the square to the camera, you will note that it is tapered. Of course it's tapered. It's got a slot on one end for the chain and a cross pin, and then the other side is just sort of rounded. So one of the things that happened was he said to me, we could use a roll pin for the cross pin. He was kind of excited about that. And I said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. Roll pin is the wrong thing. We're going to make it a tapered pin, and I'll get a tapered reamer, and that's the way to do it. And he's like, oh. So, but the taper is interesting. And not only is it tapered, which is, of course, no problem, right? We could do this on the lathe, but he wants it knurled. So one of our taekwondoists at the school is a machinist. So he and I do some machine talk when I see him. Unix Carbide made it home. Holy cow. I see you, Tuck. Unix Carbide is reporting Soho, Manhattan. Oh, he's not home yet. 58 degrees Fahrenheit, 55 relative humidity, and he's way late. Yeah, but you're in Soho. Welcome aboard, sir. Did you get a bagel? Did you get a bagel? I want to know if you got a bagel. That's all I'm saying. And when are you going to be home? Knishes. Oh, you got knishes? Where'd you get knishes from? I'm starting to drool now. I'm salivating. So for those of you who don't know what a knish is, it's a sort of a phyllo dough wrapped mashed potatoes. Sometimes it's grains. Yona Schnimmels. I don't know where that is, but I am just drooling. Okay, enough of that. So getting back to the project. So not only is it tapered, he wants it knurled. It's a 120-year-old place. Man, when I come down to visit you, you're going to take me there. Has to happen. So we're going to knurl this and taper this. So this actually, can you do a nice knurl on a taper? Personally, I'd opt for a frag pattern. So I don't know, but that's my learning point. You see, I get to learn something. I get to figure out how to do a knurl on a taper. Let's see. Tuck, I'm bringing you back in, buddy. Okay. Discord is live. What were you going to say? He probably walked away because I was talking too much.
What are you going to make out of regular steel, or would you switch to something fancy like titanium?
Well, so his there it is. Yona Schimmel Knish. No N. So if you guys want to go down to Soho and get a Knish, there's the link in the in the Discord. He requested steel because that's what he had before and he liked it. And we were talking with my other machinist buddy in Taekwondo, and he was thinking that 316 stainless would be nice. So at the moment, 316 stainless is the pick, and a knurl and a taper. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll figure it out. So if anybody is a knurling expert, not a Knish expert, but a knurl expert, hit me up because I want to figure out how to do this knurl on a taper, and see what needs to be done. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I have a TL1 lathe, so it's CNC, and we want to make that happen. The idea that I came up with is at the rounded base of the part. I don't know what you call these. A nun is to do I want to put a center in it, and I was thinking I would drill a hole and thread it and have a center around the hole, but then when we're all done, we could make something interesting to screw in the base. And I have a few ideas about that. So that's where we're at. Interested to hear your input. Unix audio is live on Discord if you want to come in and give us a verbal description of your Knish. Widgetworks says, knurling a taper isn't hard. I've done it many times on the TL2. Awesome. Well, we'll have to talk. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, one last thing I wanted to show you live. I know I posted a picture of it, but I got my power profiler from Nordic. So this is what you get for $90. You get their little board, a bunch of wires on connectors coming out of it, and a link to find out all the documentation. So the power profiler is what my good friend Doug came over with that led us to the 18 microamp measurement and the battery life calculations that we made a couple of weeks ago. And that's what he used. So I ran out and bought one. They're $90. They are on Mauser, DigiKey. I got it from DigiKey. And they're awesome. And they are also sold on AdaFruit because of the same reason we used it, to measure current profiles or current power usage on small devices. So there you go. Okay. Hearing no more objections from the Discord server, I'm going to kill that audio. And anybody else have any questions, comments, or snide remarks as we bring this in for a landing? Great seeing everyone. It was a weird week. Hopefully next week will be weirder. Carl Tauber discovers that Jonas Schimmel ships nationwide. So let me tell you a story about nationwide. The way Unix Carbide and I met is because he ordered a set of beveled PFG stones. By the way, PFG stones are at PFGstones.com. And if you like flat, that's where it's at. Learn more at PFGstones.com. So Unix Carbide buys a set of beveled PFG stones for me, and I shipped them to Brooklyn, and we had a little exchange on some, I don't know, text or something, because I am from Brooklyn, and that started a friendship. And he said to me, these stones are awesome. And he said, I want to buy you something. So he says, I want to send you lox and cream cheese and bagels. Now, there's only one correct answer when somebody says, I want to send you lox and cream cheese and bagels. And that answer is yes. So he sent them, and that was another place that ships worldwide. And it was awesome. Let's see. Jonas Schimmel, it's the Test Room 2003. Welcome, sir. He says, do you know what schimmel means in Dutch? I do not, and I would like to know. CJ Stevens checking out. Sir, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. And I can't leave until I find out what schimmel means in Dutch. It means mold or mildew. Well, there you go. Now, I wish I didn't know. Well, why do you think the knishes taste so good? All right, so DBX is going to check in here with a comment, and I think we're going to wrap it up. If anybody has any topics they want to see covered on these events, please let me know by sending me a DM on Instagram or on our Discord server. Also, I am going to do a random live right after we're done on behalf of Carl Tauber to teach how to use Discord for complete Discord noobs. I just made this up. So we're gonna cobble this up right after we're done with PFG.Live. So stick around. Just watch your YouTube feed for this random live to pop up about, let's say, 15 minutes after we close, and I'm going to spend a little time. Carl, can you attend that? Take care, K-Bonk. Say hi to Philadelphia. Have a cheesesteak for us. Stay flat, Flat Lapper. Nice to see you. So, Carl, can you stick around in front of your computer for another hour? If you say no, I may not do this, but if you say yes, I'll do it for you. Widgetworks says, don't they have a 90s book called Discord for Idiots? Yeah, you're gonna go to the Barnes & Noble and buy a bunch of dead trees? We're going to take care of this. Carl's, okay, CJ will be there. Okay, so we're going to do this as a random live right after we're done. And that means that the podcast will be out a few minutes late because I want to do that today. Yeah, pick a time, Carl. Carl, you're in charge. Pick a time. We'll announce it to everybody. When is comfortable to do this? Hey, Adigi, am I pronouncing that correctly? Adigi? 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 Have a great week yourself. Oh, he put a picture up. Oh, look at the picture in the chat, folks. DBX is showing us what knishes look like. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You know, I'm doing low carb right now, and this is not helping. All right, Carl, I'll take your guidance. In the absence of further guidance, I'm going to say 5 p.m. Eastern time. This many. Oh, anytime after 4? Let's make it 4:30. 4:30 Eastern, we're going to do a random live, and I'm going to teach how to get on Discord. Okay? And you Discord guys, can you be there just to help out? 4:30 p.m.? Can you do that, or is that asking too much? Bring a knish. That's all I'm saying. Because we got to get Carl on Discord, and there's a few other people we have to get on Discord. I'm looking at you, Robin. And we'll teach how to do it. It's not scary. It's actually pretty easy, and I think we could teach it in 20 minutes. Okay, 4:30. We're in. Guys, thanks for being here. I know this was a crazy random ending. K-Bonk reminds us to give a thumbs up on the YouTube video. Subscribe. Subscribe's the important thing so that you don't miss any. And we'll see you guys next week right here on the flattest podcast there is. The flattest podcast with knishes. PFG Live. See you next week.